Member for Blackstone.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. When you go to Silicon Valley, you meet some extraordinary people. And when I was there last year, I met an extraordinary Australian. Her name is Tan Le. Tan Le came to Australia as a Vietnamese refugee at the age of 4. By the age of 16, she was at university. By the age of 21, she was Young Australian of the Year. By 22, she was a barrister, and by 26, she'd set up her first company. She now lives in San Francisco, and she's the co-founder of a company called Emotive. They're a neuroengineering company. They make devices that read brain signals and can interpret facial expressions. You wear the device on your head, and it can be used for everything from gaming, where instead of a joystick you can think it and see it on the screen, through to something else which is truly extraordinary. It can be used by quadriplegics to move their wheelchair. It's got the potential to change people's lives all around the world. And I asked her why she'd set up this business in the United States and not here at home in Australia. And the answer she gave me is telling. She said, because that's where the money is and that's where the experience and the skills are. I think that story, Madam Speaker, is instructive. We're a special country where incredible things, where incredible stories like this can happen, but we're a small part of an ever increasingly more competitive world, and we're falling behind. Harvard Business Review published a report the other day that looked at the digital economies of countries around the world, and they said that Australia is stalling out. And here's why. Remember what Tan told me about money and skills. If you're a startup with a great idea like Tan's and you want to get access to capital in Australia, it's not as easy as it is in other countries. Our venture capital industry is small. We spend more on the Melbourne Cup every year than we do on new startup businesses every year. In other countries, you can raise money through crowdfunding. The United States introduced crowdfunding laws 3 years ago. New Zealand did it 2 years ago, but here in Australia we're still talking about it. In 2013, CAMAC, the Corporations and Markets Advisory Committee, was asked by the former Labor government to develop a plan to introduce crowdfunding. The government has now had that plan on their desk for a year. It was given to them in May last year. And what's happened in the last 12 months? Nothing, or no evidence that anything has happened, no legislation. We're still waiting for laws to be introduced into this parliament. Well, when the Minister for Communications was asked about this when he was at Fishburners only just over a week ago, when he was asked by start-up entrepreneurs why is it taking so long to introduce crowdfunding laws in Australia, his answer was, well, government is quite hard, actually. And then he went on, government is quite hard, so that's the excuse. Well, that's what it said in the newspaper, and I haven't heard a personal explanation denying it. Government is quite hard, actually. That's the government's answer. And then he went on and blamed the culture of the bureaucracy in Treasury. Madam Speaker, they've introduced crowdfunding in the United States. They've done it in New Zealand. They've done it in the UK, in France, Canada, Italy, even in Kenya. But we're still waiting for it here. Apparently, government's a bit hard. Well, we can fix these problems, and you can do it quickly if this government introduces legislation into the parliament. What's harder to fix is the skills problem, the skills challenge, the lack of skills, the lack of STEM skills that we have in Australia. Here's the challenge. We're seeing an increasing drop in the number of low-skilled jobs available in Australia and, in contrast, an increase in the number of high-skilled jobs. And most of those jobs are jobs that require STEM skills: science, technology, engineering and maths. 75% of the fastest-growing jobs in Australia today require STEM skills, and we're not producing enough people with those skills. Let me give you an example. In 2003, about 9,000 people graduated in Australia with ICT degrees. 10 years later, that was reduced to 3,446. In other words, the number of people graduating with an ICT degree in Australia in the last 10 years has dropped by 2/3. We have a similar problem at high school when it comes to maths. The number of people studying maths at an intermediate or an advanced level at high school has dropped by about 35% in the last 20 years. And how do we compare with the rest of the world? Well, 16% of Australians graduate from university with STEM degrees. That compares with South Korea, that's about double that, or China, where 41% of students graduate with a STEM degree, or Singapore, where it's nearly 50%. And these are the countries that Australia is competing with. We are already falling behind, and making it more expensive to go to university, introducing $100,000 university degrees, is only going to make it harder. Already, employers are finding it hard to get employees with the necessary STEM skills. The Chief Scientist put out a report only, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago, where he did a survey of employers and asked them what they were looking for from employees and how they were able to get employees with STEM skills. What it found, they surveyed hundreds of employers. They found that 1/3 of employers couldn't find the employees that they needed with STEM skills, STEM graduates. And I was at Google last week. I asked the same question. They've got the same problem. Google employs about 1,000 people Australia-wide. About half of them are computer programmers, and half of them come from overseas. And the reason for that is they can't find the workers that they need with the skills they need. And that's why what Bill Shorten announced, what the Leader of the Opposition announced only 2 weeks ago, is so important. A plan to build the skills that we need for the jobs of the future. Everything from coding in primary school through to training more teachers, through to writing off the HECS debts of 100,000 university STEM graduates. And that's just the start. If we're going to do this properly, we can't just do it at university or at high school. It's got to start at primary school. Last year, in the United Kingdom, they introduced coding in kindergarten. And in other countries, they're doing exactly the same thing. Vietnam, Canada, Singapore, Finland starting it next year. The United States is trialling this in 30 school districts right across the country, including Chicago and New York. And why are they doing this? They're doing this because they understand that coding is the literacy of the 21st century. Malcolm Turnbull understands this as well because he said much the same thing. He understands, like we understand, that students in this century will need to understand coding like we needed to understand English and maths in the last century. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody's going to become a computer programmer. Of course, that's not going to happen. But not everybody that studies maths becomes a mathematician either. But we use it every day. And it's exactly the same here. That's why what we announced in our budget reply is so important. We need our kids not just to be able to use technology, but to be able to create technology. Not just to be able to play the game, but to be able to make the game. Now, the Business Council of Australia has called for this. The start-up sector has called for this. Malcolm Turnbull's called for this. The day after the budget reply, he said, if we want to succeed and continue to succeed as a prosperous first-world economy, we need a leaner, faster, more imaginative, more innovative, more technologically sophisticated, and the key tool for that is coding. And he's right, and Bill Shorten's right. We need to make it happen. The problem is Christopher Pyne took it out of the draft curriculum. That's the problem. Government's apparently too hard. We haven't got crowdfunding legislation yet. We still don't have coding in the curriculum, because even though some people on the other side understand how important this is, it's not happening, because government is a bit too hard. Let me go back to the story of Tan Lee. I remember her telling me that when she landed in Australia, her mum told her to touch the ground because this is a very special place. And the little girl bent down and she touched the ground and she looked up and she said to her mum, "It doesn't feel very special." And her mum looked back at her and said, "You've got to make it special with your mind." And that's what that little girl did. And that's what we need to do, to make sure that we build the skills we need for the future. The problem is this government is not doing it, It's going to take a Bill Shorten-led Labor government to get the job done.